I'm joined today by Omer Moav, who is a professor of economics at the University of Warwick and also in the Interdisciplinary Center Israel. It's so great to speak to you today. You know, we've been talking about two different but related issues for many years now. One is that of wealth and income inequality in the world within specific countries, however you want to sort of slice it. And we've also been talking about the development of technology, including automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. We have to think about, over time, looking into the future, what impact will the development of new technology have on wealth inequality and income inequality? And I don't think it will come as a surprise to many in our audience that we are getting to a point where technology will actually grow inequality. To talk to us generally about why that is and how that works.
Well, okay. I mean, it's the facts are that income inequality has significantly increased in most developed countries in the last, I would say, 4 decades, more or less. And I think the consensus among researchers is that it is because of technology. And then you could think of different mechanisms. I would say the main thing is that you still need the very skilled to implement the new technology, to develop the new technology. You still need the unskilled to do some even simple tasks that robots and machines cannot replace. Sometimes it's the most simple work of waiting or cleaning. And then there is the middle class and a lot of jobs that ended because technology replaced these jobs. And I think that the more recent trend is that there is some kind of a shrink of the middle class because of these phenomena.
Well, when you look at reports which say, and there's a variety of these reports, but many of them will sort of estimate the percentage of current jobs that are may be automatable at some point in the future, and they will usually give you a breakdown of the industries within which those jobs exist. When you look at sort of the education level required for many of those jobs, it's easy to see how the jobs that are less likely to be automatable, by and large, sort of holding other factors equal, are jobs that require more education. So that seems to me, Omer, like a very direct way in which, if you start to see technology favor maintaining jobs that require more education, that could become quite a self-fulfilling process, which will increase inequality drastically.
Absolutely, I agree. I would just add maybe a distinction that is important to make between the level of technology. So you have a new technology that replaces an unskilled or a less skilled worker, although sometimes it could also be a skilled worker. Some of the technology today replaces a lot of the work that doctors do, medical doctors. But let's say, by and large, this is not the group that is mostly affected. But then there is the rate of change itself, because a lot of technologies, when they're first introduced, they require a skilled worker to implement, to work with. But over the time, just think of word processors and stuff like that, the new technology becomes very friendly and less skilled workers could use it. So what happens is that the rate of change, the fact that we all the time are exposed to new and new stuff arriving, and you need the skilled workers, the high ability workers, at this end of implementing the new technology until it becomes more friendly to the less skilled workers. And I think that's a major source of the rising in inequality.
Well, along those lines, is it reasonable to think that there could be a technological advancement that simultaneously increases our total level of inequality, but also increases welfare for most, if not all, people? In other words, is it possible that we might be able to raise the standard of living for everybody to some degree? However, we might also increase inequality as a result of that technology at the same time.
Absolutely. I think that this is what happens throughout most of the last decades. It varies between countries. So if you think of the United States, there was a slowdown, if not even a reduction in wage earnings or in the lower part of the distribution. But most developed countries, this is not the case. My home country, Israel, for instance, inequality has increased, but the welfare of the lower income earners, the less skilled workers, has also increased. Now, there is a bit of a philosophical issue here, is about how do you measure welfare? Because if you think, well, welfare is, of course, the bundle of consumption I could afford, and having all these innovations increase the wages of even the less skilled workers and increase the variety of consumption goods. The technology we use is also part of our consumption. The smartphones we have help us a lot in many things. We could waste time on Facebook and stuff like that and enjoy it. So that's one side of it. But then there is the inequality. And if my welfare or one's welfare is negatively affected by envy, by understanding that other people's income growth is much faster, then you could easily get the result in which the welfare of the lower tail in the income distribution actually goes down.
This is sort of difficult to measure in a sort of net impact for economists, isn't it? I mean, imagine, for example, some significant medical technology that eliminates or eradicates, I don't know, some disease that affects people regardless of income. So that's a really good thing for welfare. But at the same time, some people are enriched by that, and inequality in cities becomes more noticeable, and we know that that connects to more petty crime on the street, right? How could we even get a sense of sort of the net impact of that?
I think it's very hard to get the sense of the net impact. Of course, you could measure crime, and you could measure the effect of crime on people. It's not easy, but the one thing that is very hard, perhaps impossible to measure, is really this envy effect, the misery people have from inequality per se. That's indeed not something easy to measure. But still, if even things that we cannot measure, we should be aware that they exist.
I want to ask a question that maybe is more philosophical than economic, or at least maybe relates more to the philosophy of economics than something that we can measure. Are there ever good reasons to try to artificially restrict the advancement of technology? And we often have this example of, when we had horse buggy drivers and the idea of the car was presented, there were those concerned about the jobs that would be lost with the advent of automobiles for those who drive the horse buggies. And of course, now it would seem absurd to have prevented the advent of the automobile to save those jobs, but it's an interesting thought experiment nonetheless. How do you think about, as someone in the field, the artificial restriction of technological advancement?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. Obviously, I would say that, like any other economist, as far as I understand, we would really object having like a government committee that would decide which technologies are allowed and which are not based on health or risk, but based on their effect on inequality and their effect on eliminating jobs. That would be extremely risky. And indeed, in the short run, people tend to object some technological innovations that destroy jobs, and politicians would definitely go with them if they could. And how do I know all that? Because there is a parallel between innovations that destroy jobs but nevertheless increase welfare. And by the way, should always emphasize that despite destroying jobs, new jobs are created. We didn't move over the last 200 years since the Ludists has break machines to prevent machinery to replace workers. The fear of increasing unemployment still didn't happen. I mean, I don't know what will happen in the future, But so far, every year there is someone saying, look, soon technology would destroy jobs and unemployment would go up. So far, it didn't happen. But here's the parallel we have, which is imports. You open an economy to imports of goods, this also destroys jobs because instead of producing a good, you buy it for a lower price. Mm-hmm. This creates the jobs in this economy. So you could think of the car industry in the US, for instance. You buy cheaper cars from Japan or Korea, and this destroys part of the jobs in the US. But it's exactly like a technological innovation because by and large, it increases the welfare of the population. People could buy cheaper cars or better cars. And in fact, unemployment doesn't go up. So that's another interesting fact because just like technological innovations, some jobs are created, some jobs are destroyed, some are created, or the same thing with imports. You import more, jobs are destroyed. But as a result of importing, there is a simple economic mechanism that increases exports and new jobs are created. And you could see that unlike technology, politicians in many cases try to block imports. What is the difference?
Interesting. Very, very interesting. We've been speaking with Omer Moav, professor of economics at the University of Warwick and the Interdisciplinary Center Israel. Thanks so much for talking to me about this today.
Thank you very much.